So today I am bringing you my full Overwatch in a nutshell guide. Basically, in this guide, I'm going to be running you through the exact process of what is Overwatch, how we can deal with Overwatch, what units really proceed well in Overwatch, and how I personally deal with Overwatch as an Orc player. Now, this series kind of ties in a lot with my For Dummies series, where basically I'm going to be explaining concepts in Warhammer that most people get confused or misunderstand, like keywords or Overwatch, and fundamentally condense all that information to one simple to follow video so you can just wrap it around your head, have it completely understand, and you can jump in and start using it or know how to completely counter it in the process. I just want to make this kind of information with areas like Overwatch and these slight specific rules that people don't really understand. I want to make it as easy for you to understand because it's a good mechanic in the game that needs to be more utilized, especially with big shooting armies if you're moving into that kind of scene. So if I can explain concepts like that as simple as possible and I can get at least one person to fully understand the concept, that's a mission complete for me. But yeah, basically today I'm just going to be going over exactly what is Overwatch and how we can deal with it in the proper manner. So let's just jump straight into what is Overwatch. Now, before we jump into what exactly is Overwatch and I start explaining all the ins and outs of what it does in the game, I just want to mention that I have recently put up a poll on my community page. Basically, I want to see if people are interested in a program that would offer customized guides to help beginner players build their first list. Now remember, I'm not selling you anything like I explained in my previous video. I am just testing the waters and seeing if this is a problem. Because if this is a problem I can fix, well, I want to fix it. I want to help beginner players through that rough period of trying to get every rule understanding and building a successful army around trying to learn everything at the same time. I want to make that as easy as possible and guide them through the factor of that. So, if you are interested, if you do find like this could be a good opportunity, if you think, yes, I would love to know how to build my new army or build my first army, then I want you to go vote on my community page or send me a private message saying, yes, I am interested. And if you're not interested, vote no. Honestly, I don't really care if you vote yes or no. I am simply just want to know what the general community basis is on this topic. Is it a problem or is it not a problem? If it is a problem, I already have a couple of videos that I've been making over the past few days that go into detail about how to build an army, like all the units, every single codex explained, how to build a proper army list, how to pick your faction, how to learn an army quick and easy, and then I'll go into more of the situational where I give private calls and customized videos for the specific needs of the person I'm dealing with. And obviously this would be a paid program because I'm putting effort in, but like I've explained, it would only be $10 for the first 5 people. But not selling anything, just seeing if this is interesting. So go vote. You can say no or you can say yes. I just want an answer so I know what is happening. But that's not important. That's a side note. Let's get into the real in-depth information of Overwatch. So let's get into it with what exactly is Overwatch. Now, Fire Overwatch, which is its full name, is a core game stratagem, which means every single army in the game is allowed to use a stratagem. This goes along with like 12 or 13 other core stratagems you're allowed to use, but we're focusing on Fire Overwatch today. So basically, Fire Overwatch is a stratagem you can spend for 1 CP. You can spend this in any of the movement phase or charge phase of your opponent's turn, and it can be used in any form of movement-based mechanic in the game. So if the enemy is making a fallback move, if the enemy is making an advanced move or a normal move, if it's a charge, if they're using a special stratagem ability where they're moving a specific area, you can use Fire Overwatch. And in doing so, you shoot the enemy that's up to 24 inches away like it was your shooting phase. The only restriction is that you only hit on 6s. So basically, it's like you get a kind of re-go at shooting them. Now, listen very carefully because it specifically states as if it were your shooting phase. This is not your shooting phase. This is not you replay your shooting phase. This is you shooting. So you're not shooting in the shooting phase. You are just shooting, which means very specifically that any army abilities or special shooting phase rules cannot be used in Fire Overwatch. That means big guns never tire, and firing deck cannot be used in Overwatch because they are shooting mechanics. You gotta like this understand, because many people make the mistake of thinking, oh well, I can just shoot and use all my shooting abilities. I get to reroll hit rolls in the shooting phase, but it's not the shooting phase. If your weapon keyword or your weapon stat says every time the model makes a shooting attack, then you can use it. But if it says in the shooting phase, you cannot use it because it's the shooting phase. You're just shooting. You're not in the actual shooting phase. And this can be interesting because it's basically that the only special kind of rules that go through is army army gun keywords and special enhancements that go onto the gun, not the actual aspect of it in the shooting phase. If it was, it gets a buff in the shooting phase, you can't use it. But if the gun gets a buff, then you can use it. It is quite very specific when you get into it, and it can bring up, it's actually brought up a lot of controversy because some people think that you can use big guns never tire, some people think you can't. Firing deck is also another one. It's very controversial. People get mixed mashed because it's honestly a really bad written rule when it comes to this kind of movement and if it were your shooting phase style, and people can get very, very confused, and certain rules make it through and certain rules don't, and people argue about it, and it is very controversial. But I just want you to know and remember, firing deck is shooting your enemy as if it were your shooting phase. You're not shooting them, you're not using your shooting phase again, you're just shooting them. So remember that when you're doing Overwatch. So yes, that is Overwatch in a nutshell. Now let's get into how we can make Overwatch even better. Now, how are we going to make Overwatch work for us in the best possible way we possibly can? Now, this stratagem does cost a CP after all, and it can only be used once per battle round. So once you spend it, it's gone. And then suddenly, it's a lot harder to kind of combat the enemy moving in a certain way without Fire Overwatch. So when we use it, we want to have a lot of value from when we use it into whatever enemy we're shooting, so we technically like double the ROI we're actually getting from it and mitigating that CP effect with it. So how can we make Overwatch 10 times better and make it super effective at doing what we want it to do, which is kill as much as it possibly can? And that is going to be through keywords. Now, there's keywords in the game that work really well at helping mitigate the 6 effect of the Overwatch, or making it a lot easier to hit on 6s and actually benefiting you from when you hit on 6s. The first example of this is going to be Turret. Now, the reason Turret is so good is because it's just an auto hit. And the auto hit is just, it literally mitigates the entire 6 factor of it. It literally just turns away from the whole hit on 6s and just like, oh, no, we just made all our dice. That's cool. We got all our dice went through. And it's fantastic at just dealing with one of the biggest parts of Overwatch, which is the hitting on 6 factor, and you get that auto hit. Now, good examples of the auto hit is going to be the Sisters of Battle. Sisters of Battle love all their flamers in some of their heavier vehicles, all their infantry squads, some of their characters like it a lot, I know. And it's very, very effective because of how much turret general weapons they're bringing into their arsenal through their infantry especially. So once you're performing the Overwatch, it's most likely you're going to have that turret keyword somewhere in your data sheet that you're shooting with, which is really helpful if you are playing Sisters. Another example of this is going to be the Tyrannofex. Now, the Tyrannofex in Tyranids is actually a very good choice because suddenly you're offering a powerful flame weapon. Most of the time, turret weapons are quite weak because of this auto hit ability, but the Tyrannofex's one actually does really, really good. It has great AP, a decent flat 2 or 3 damage, I think it may be, and a generally actually good strength. So you're going to be killing around like 5 Space Marines 16.5% of the time, and dealing, I think it's 6 damage on average to a Space Marine squad with benefit to cover, which is not bad when you look at one unit who's auto hitting, which is, I think personally, it's a really good option if you are playing Tyranids and you're looking for that kind of Overwatch effect in it. And just a general example is going to be Burner Boys. Burner Boys, they have turret. It's not very valuable with they're only doing like 1 damage and AP -1, but when you can bring a lot of them, it can be a lot better for a more flaming truck Overwatch approach, if you know what I mean. They are good, but just as an example for turret. Now, moving on, the second keyword is going to be sustained hits. Now, sustained hits is really good because you're basically doubling your output for whatever you get. Because you're already hitting on sixes, suddenly the whole goal of hitting on sixes is doubled. So if you hit 1 6, you've now hit 2 6s. You hit 2 6s, you've hit 4 6s. You hit 4 6s, you've hit 8 6s. 8 is 16. 16 is 32. Suddenly you've got this massive overlooking, this aspect to look forward to, so you actually get benefiting for just hitting what you want to hit anyway. So things like flash kits, who get that sustained hits on their snaz gun, like the Imperial Guard, some of their Death Corps Creed soldiers, I think, have some sustained hits, and their shock troopers, and maybe some of their artillery, the bombardment gun, and the Lehman Russ defender or attacker might have some. I'm not 100% sure on that, don't quote me on that. And I believe the Obliterators have some sustained hits on their heavy guns, but I wouldn't be 100% sure on that, so don't quote me. But I know flash kits. And the point is, if you do have some sustained hit units in your army, it's most likely they're going to be backing it up with a powerful gun. So have them out front. If you want to deliver a powerful Overwatch that when you don't have turret, it's very good at doubling your output and giving more value for not rolling on sixes in the first place. Now, and also any reroll hit roll abilities that go on the gun, not the ability, not the shooting phase. Because remember, it's not the shooting phase, just the gun can work really well at delivering a more fire. Because you get to reroll the entire hit roll. Suddenly, you roll 18 dice, you hit 3 6s on average. Let's just say that. You get to reroll the entire hit roll. Suddenly, that's an extra 2, 3, 4 maybe dice, which is a huge benefit, especially when you're looking at more powerful guns with higher strength, like strength 9 or strength 12, or the AP3, and maybe even the flat damage 3. Suddenly you're looking at a very, very good powerful weapon to deliver a high amount of volley fire into the Overwatch target, because the whole point of the Overwatch is to kill as much as we can. So if we can do that auto hit roll, suddenly you mitigate the effect of the sixes, giving you more power, especially for those more heavy gunner units. Now, armies that play really well into Overwatch for just general purposes is going to be Sisters of Battle with their Miracle Dice, giving you the ability to take away and trade in dice for your Miracle Dice can be very good at succeeding over what you want to do. So suddenly, let's just say that your infantry units are sitting here, and you've got a couple of Chaos Space Marine units, or the Chosen units are sitting over there, and they want to go the objective. And you need to make sure this goes through. And you don't have turret, you have some heavy gunners, and you need to make sure that they go through. You can trade in your Miracle Dice to make sure it happens. And suddenly, if you have that, let's say you have 4 6s or 3 6s and 2 6s, suddenly you hit, let's just say 3 6s and you need 5. Suddenly you can just trade in those dice, and it makes it a lot easier to successfully build off that shot, and it's a lot easier to successfully get through the Overwatches you need to get to make an effect that you want to make an effect on. Now, it's going to really be used once, because you do get Miracle Dice for like killing and for doing certain Ds, I believe, if I remember correctly. But it's still you're only really going to be able to use this once, considering how much Miracle Dice you're actually going to need to trade in for the hit rerolls. But what really takes the cake here is going to be the Eldar's Fate Dice. Now, it works very similar to Miracle Dice, where you roll a bunch of dice and you can trade them in through the game, whatever you need to do. The thing is, their Psyker ability, their Psykers turn Fate Dice into 6 automatically in the command phase, which means you suddenly have a much larger array of 6s in your army to choose from. And when you have things like the Fire Warriors and I forgot the infantry name, the blue guys, whatever their name is, with a really good Overwatch ability that allows you to hit on 5s and 4s if you're controlling an objective. That's not bad when you're looking at the Elder. So they're really good at dealing with Overwatch with their infantry units, whatever they. Please put in the comments the blue guys, whatever they're called. Please do. I need to remember them. Their ability to mitigate and hit on 5s instead of 6s and 4s if you're overlooking an objective. And the Fire Warriors, a massive amount of firepower they're bringing with the turret and the huge guns that you can automatically trade in with Fate Dice for 6s, and some of the big heavy walkers and the speed bikers, whatever they're called. They also offer some firepower. You can really deliver a punch with Elder, and just create that massive gap when you need Overwatch. When you need Overwatch, you can use it and it can work very, very well. But that is how we're going to make Overwatch work really well for us. Some keywords, some good armies that work into it, but how exactly are we going to deal with it when we need to get around it? So, we've figured out how to make our Overwatch threat more impactful. But what happens when the roles are reversed and suddenly we're the ones who's suffering from the Overwatch? Let's just say we're going up against Leagues of Votan and they've got 2 Judgment tokens on us and suddenly they get a full hit reroll and a full hit room roll. What's going on? And they're ready to Overwatch. Suddenly, that's looking a lot worse for wear when we're at the receiving end of the actual Overwatch stratagem. So how can we mitigate its effects to the most possible ability when we're going up against a more shooting army like Tau or Guard or Leagues of Otan, who are really going to pack a punch when it comes to using the stratagem in a successful way to do lots of damage when they need to. So let's get into how exactly we can mitigate the effects so we don't die when we need to make important moves like charging or falling back or getting on an objective when whatever movement characteristic we need done. Now, the first one is going to be giving them Overwatch Panic. And this thing is, Overwatch is such a valuable strategy. But like I said before, it can only be used once per game and it does cost a CP. So there is a tiny bit of stress that goes along with it when you're using this Overwatch ability. And you can use this to your advantage. Suddenly, your opponent now needs to make a choice about overwatching. And they're more likely to make a mistake because they're in this stressful state of trying to figure out what the best target is. So if you give them multiple amounts of targets, valuable targets that are definitely can do an impact on the enemy's army if they don't shoot them, they're more likely to make a mistake in shooting the wrong unit and overwatching the wrong unit, in which you can capitalize on and do a lot more, because then suddenly that overwatch is gone for the round and you can perform in either charging or falling back or whatever it may be. A good example of this is going to be, let's just say that there was a Tyrannofex and there was also a Biovore, and they were quite far away. I had my Squighog boys charging the Biovore, and I had a squad of boys charging the Tyrannofex. Now, shooting the squad of boys into the objective marker, which the Tyrannofex is going to be on, will be the most viable option. But suddenly, my Squighog boys are charging the Biovore and making it a lot more threatening because it's going to kill it because of anti-monster keywords, and the enemy doesn't want to lose his Biovore. So suddenly, he's going to make a panicked move and shoot the Squighogs in an attempt to generally mitigate their effect, which is doing nothing because I wanted him to shoot them because they're quite durable. And then suddenly I get onto the OC with the Tyrannofex and I close in, I save that Overwatch for the round, and I've made a successful charge with both of them. All it is forcing your opponent to make mistakes in a way that allows you to benefit from them, but they generally suffer from what the effect is. Now, when I give examples like this in the future, when I get more of a setup, I will be going on like TTS and giving like a proper live example of how I would play in a certain situation. But for now, I'm just gonna have to use my amazing voice to explain it, so you get to enjoy that for a little bit. But when I do get my proper setup and I get a more powerful rig and I can start performing multiple tasks, I will be giving you a TTS view and more value when it comes to that. But yeah, that's gonna be the first one, and the second one's just gonna be tank it out. It's going to be putting units who are really tanky and really durable up in the front lines, especially when they have Overwatch or have the ability to Overwatch, so that they're most likely to mitigate the effects and just take no damage, considering they are still hitting on sixes either way. Now, a good example of this is going to be like putting Mozrog, or putting a really tanky Lehman Russ, or putting some large infantry unit up the squad. Putting a really tanky, durable unit up front is going to mitigate the effect of being shot at with the Overwatch. So suddenly they waste a lot of their shots because it's the only shot they can really shoot at, but it's a valuable enough target that's going to make them still want to Overwatch onto it, but because of its feel no pain, because of invulnerable save, because of its really good toughness, or whether it be its just general wound capacity, it mitigates the effects and doesn't really put as much impact as the opponent wanted it to. So the second one is just going to be tanking it out, putting your tanky units up front, dealing a lot, providing a lot of value for the Overwatch to shoot at it, and then tank the whole thing till it's completely wasted. Now, that is going to be how we're going to deal with Overwatch in a more army-wide term. But I want to show you how exactly I deal with Overwatch when playing Orcs, so you might be able to get a couple ideas about how I perform and how you might implement it in your list. Now we're going to get into how I deal with Overwatch as an Orc player. Now it'd be super cheesy of me just to say I use Commandos and Snickrot because they literally have the ability to completely deny Overwatch. If you didn't know their ability is literally just the fact they just can't be Overwatched, which is super cheesy, super cliche, and it can be taken as just like a, oh, well, you have that ability, so what am I supposed to do? Just get an ability? No, I want to show you how I actually deal with Overwatch. I still obviously use Snickrot and Commandos in a certain way to deal with Overwatch, but I want to show you how I deal with situations with Overwatch in ways that other armies can also employ in their list to kind of deal with Overwatch. The first one is going to be having a very successful tank line, or what I call it, a sponge line. It's going to be pre-setting up a line that's going to be moving up and generally be a very tanky and it's already going to be taking shots anyway. Suddenly, if I have a Mozrog, my big squad of Mega Knobs, and my Warbiker squad with Warboss with the Super Cyborg body enhancement with 4 Feel No Pain, that's a very large squad that when they get the Overwatch in, because I'm going to be either charging into the OC and taking the OC or offering a big war threat, which they're going to want to Overwatch me, it's very, very eventful that they're going to Overwatch it. And then they completely waste the Overwatch with the amount of toughness, with the amount of wounds I have, and it mitigates the effect of how much it was. So it both implements the idea of the pressure, where I'm putting a lot of pressure on them to Overwatch me, but it also puts the fact on I'm tanking a lot of it. So if you can get a nice, strong sponge line, as I like to call it, or a nice strong tanky unit that's going to be able to provide a lot of value, whether it's going to be, oh, I can do a lot of shooting to you after this phase, or I can do a lot of attacks, or I can hold this objective really well, offer value, so they do Overwatch you, and suddenly they waste their Overwatch, so your smaller, more skirmisher units can come up, do a lot of damage, and get into your go turn, which is what you want to be with any army in the game. The next one is going to be maybe a more specific one, but I have a lot more confidence in the War because I have that 5 up invulnerable save to my entire army. So I feel a lot more confident pushing in with my Nobs, my Warboss, my Warbikers, every little infantry unit because they already have that invulnerable save. So it makes it a lot more confident because I have that extra layer of protection against the already army that's hitting on 6s. So it's a very, very valuable source, especially if they're going to target some more smaller units. I can force them to, so that suddenly I have more tanky units, so they waste shots, they get Overwatch panic syndrome, and they shoot the wrong unit, and basically what I explained in the last video. Now, you can also do this. You can put units that have maybe gain an ability or have feel no pain or get an enhancement there when you move up, so you can have a lot more confidence. It's basically putting as much confidence as in your kill line as possible to mitigate effects from Overwatch. I'm not saying put all your attention on it. I'm not saying have every unit, but having 1 or 2 units that maybe gain feel no pain or get an enhancement as a buff that move into a kill line in round 2 or 3 can have a nice confidence boost in making sure like, okay, this squad is safe because they're not going to be Overwatched because I know I have that big tankiness effect on them for either this round or continuous rounds. And the last one is going to be, I love, it's going to be really tying into that Overwatch panic ability, which is going to be making big distractions with sudden appearing units. Now, this can be Deep Strike, Strategic Reserve, and Teleporting. All of this is fantastic because it's very good at making surprise situations that your opponent can react very wrongly to in the right situation. Example, I teleport my weird boy in. I charge. Suddenly, they're really scared. They're like, where did this massive squad of boys come from? They've got feel no pain from the pain boy. What am I supposed to do? Uh-oh, suddenly they make the mistake of overwatching them when they didn't realize they should have overwatched this. They should have overwatched They should have overwatched my knobs over there, who's now going to be able to go into their very large units, their large vehicle units, and just tear them down to shreds. So it's very, very good at making surprise attacks. So what I would say is, if you have units that are very good at teleporting, units that are very good at strategic reserve, units that are very good at deep striking, like if you play demons with deep striking, or you play Grey Knights with their teleporting, you can make a very good Overwatch surprise to allow for mistakes to more likely happen, because obviously you can read the board very easily. You can be like, okay, they're pushing up with that. But when you have teleport, deep strike, or a strategic reserve, suddenly the opponent didn't know you were doing that, and suddenly that option is just there, and it's much more likely they're going to take the option of making the Overwatch panic and shooting the wrong unit, in generally benefiting you in the right ways. But that is going to be the entire Overwatch guide that I have made. I hope you really, really enjoyed my full Overwatch. I actually really, really like making like these dummy guides where I go over like how I deal with these kind of situations and my take on how you can personally implement it. And I really want to keep making more. So if you do like this kind of for dummies series where I make these videos on these really hard to grasp topics, put in the comments what you want to see next, and I might even make a video about it. But remember, go vote so I know what to do with that freaking thing, and I hope to catch you in the next one.